In July of 2015, the former president of the Republic of the Gambia, Yahya Jammeh, made significant amendments to the electoral laws of the Gambia. These amendments were made to suppress the opposition, undermine democratic processes, but also prepare him for the 2016 elections, which was coming really fast. Among the key changes he made to the electoral laws was he increased the candidate fee from 10,000 Gambian dollars to $500,000 Gambian dollars. And this was only for the presidential candidates. Similar adjustments were also made for the mayoral candidates, local council candidates, as well as other candidates seeking for the National Assembly. Lulu mean moy, before these changes were made, moy bala ñu def these changes, time bo nonu candidate bu nekk only 10,000 Gambian dollars nga needon pour nga register sa party ak nga mëna participate in Gambian elections as a presidential candidate. Waaye Jammeh dafa def this change, su ko defee xaalis bi dafa change léegi from 10,000 Gambian dollars to now 500,000 Gambian dollars. Loolu nga need pour mëna register your party. Another key changes he made to the electoral laws was he increased the signature requirement from 500 signatures to 10,000 signatures. Loolu mean mooy time boobu su nit bëggoon a taxaw elections as a presidential candidate lu gaay ni doon seen nomination bi mooy only 500 Gambians ñu signal leen pour acknowledge their participation in the elections. Then Jammeh in 2015, through the help of the IEC, increased that number from 500 signatures being required to now 10,000 signatures. Why? There was an additional requirement that at least a minimum of 1,000 signatures needed to come from each of the 5 administrative regions of the Gambia. More than having 10,000 alone is not enough. That 10,000 need to come from all the different administrative regions. So I guess this is that 10,000, 1,000 minimum needs to come from North Bank region, another 1,000 needs to come from CRR, another 1,000 needs to come from Upper River region, and all other regions in the Gambia. But another major event that happened in 2015 was, this was the time when ECOWAS was trying to convince all West African countries to adopt the term limit. Moy ECOWAS ñu doon push West African countries yi mooy lu mel ni Gambia, Senegal, Nigeria and other countries in West Africa pour gars yi adopt lu ñu oyee term limit pour nga xam président bu nekk ñaata at nga mën a toog su ko defee su time bu jotee nga wàcca keneen taxaw. Why in 2015 Jammeh rejected that as well. Jammeh was one of the countries, or the Gambia was one of the countries that rejected that requirement. Why? Da ngay gis ne while all these changes were happening to the electoral laws of the Gambia, Gambians were for more than 20 years subjected to enforced disappearances, torture, police brutality, rape, and all other forms of human rights violations under Jammeh's watch. While all of those things were happening, Jammeh ñëw mel ne okay ba tey dama change electoral laws bi su ko defee moom mun na ciment boppam as the president of the Gambia continue to rule for God knows when. So this was why when 2016 came, Gambians, especially the opposition, knew that this was going to be a do or die moment for Gambia and Gambians. Why da ngay gis ne with all these major changes to the electoral laws of the Gambia, even if all the opposition parties had come together to form a coalition, but these laws ñu maintain ko in the Gambia, the chances of them winning the 2016 election was still going to be very, very slim because all the laws were against them. And then Jammeh was going to win the elections and continue to rule us under these harsh conditions, or under the harsh conditions that we have been already living in for a very, very long time. And again, on top of the changes in the electoral laws, him being the incumbent, among the powers to use his money, because obviously Jammeh was the president of the Gambia for 20 years. Why among an additional advantage to use state resources to fund his political activities. Jammeh amon na lolu yep. So legi ben amna all the laws in his favor. On top of that, two more opposition ci halis, but he was more connected to the opposition because mom halis bu nan am di mëna sponsor tribal to the provinces opposition ci amuñ ton ko won. So li mo taxon nak in 2016 the opposition, especially the UDP, came out and said no, we cannot go to any elections unless there is major electoral reforms, because with all these bad laws the chances of winning is almost zero. And it was during this protest, seeking for a fair fight between Jammeh and the opposition, Silen Tewon Solo Sandeng mu gaañu woon in detention. Wow, why Solo Sandeng mo gaañu woon, but a lot of other people were also impacted during this protest. Ñoo Lang Marong, ñoo Nogoy Njai, Fatoumata Jawara, and a lot of other people, especially from the UDP party. So then the guys staged this protest. Then there was a lot of pressure from many international groups asking for the government of the Gambia to investigate the death of Solo Sandeng but also release all the people that were held at the mile too. So why even with Solo dying in detention while held by the police, the government of the Gambia never agreed to those electoral reforms. Solo Sandeng nekon the fight for. While the opposition were still adamant that this is a change that we can bring to the Gambians. That means that they have to carve out a strategy that works for all the political parties so that they can unite, come as one, as a unified force to challenge in the ballots. So I pray that the soul of Solo Sandeng and all other Gambians that died fighting for this to rest in perfect peace. This was a very, very important moment of our history. We should never forget that Solo Sandeng, Noganjai, and all people died fighting for a better Gambia for you and me. Why? This happened in 2015. 10 years later, Gambia better struggle with those bad laws. And 10 years later, Gambians are still dying while protesting. Because mistake when we change the president, we forgot that if we change the president but not changing the laws upon which the president operates on, such change, right? With all the many injustice that was meted out onto our opposition parties during Jammeh's era, now that we have all these opposition parties coming together to form the government, the first thing that they're gonna change was those electoral laws, or at least the constitution of the Gambia. Wow, the electoral laws, some of those changes, which is really good. Why people are still dying while protesting because some of the other laws Gambians don't fight, more the Public Order Act and other laws have always been there, especially the main constitution, better than for any significant change. We are still operating under the same laws that Jammeh used to suppress Gambians, especially Nyom. Because yes, it's true that the bad laws from the 1997 constitution after the Gambians, while Jammeh were all the opposition parties. And these were the same people that failed to change the 1997 constitution. Lolo is something that I'm still struggling to understand. Greetings Gambia and greetings Gambians. Welcome to another episode of the Better Gambia series. Thank you for always supporting us. It's been a slow but very organic growth in terms of subscribers, and I am sure we can even get better. So for those of you that have subscribed, thank you so much. But for those that haven't yet subscribed, please go ahead and hit the subscription button so that we can continue to create more content like this for you. This episode is dedicated to all the fallen heroes, because they wanted the Gambia to be a better country. The people that died because they wanted you and I to live a better life. Why? I make a quick disclaimer that I'm not a member of the UDP, NPP, or any of the political parties. In fact, I don't believe in partisanship. I always prefer to approach problems with a non-partisan perspective. I have huge respect to all the political parties, especially their leaders, starting off with Adama Barrow, and all these political leaders. Why the only thing is, I'm not aligning myself to any of those parties yet. So I decide not to do that too. Probably will also talk about that. But at this point, I just want to remain neutral and then be able to see things from different perspectives. The topic is about protest, the increasing number of protests in the Gambia. Gis nañ ne tay protest mi ngi bari bu baax ci biir Gambia, with some of them being very violent, leading to the beating of the protesters and even killing in some instances via the use of force by the police and other armed groups. Starting with the most recent protest, modern protest bu nga xamne happened on between Lamen and Mandinari on September 26th and 27th, which was on a Friday and Saturday, following the death of Omar Badjie, a 27-year-old boy who died during a police pursuit. According to the narration, 4 police officers were on a patrol duty when they encountered a group of boys smoking cannabis in Mandinari. So lolu mean moy so 4 police officers ñoo nekkon ci area bi fofu nonu Mandinari di doon def seen liggéey patrol. So in the process ñu gis like a group of boys ñi nga xamne ñu doon tuxtaay. Ba boys ci gisee police officers then they started running after police rite leen. So ci biir rite bobu nonu si la dis Omar Badjie mu daanu. So bem daano, police realized that he was struggling. This was the first narration. so then si la ko police yi jël ñu ros ko to Banjulunding health center bam fa eggee ñu referring to Kanifing. Now bam eggee Kanifing he was pronounced death on arrival moom mi ne dafa dee even bala moo egga Kanifing. So police that was the initial statement then waxoon ne daal si biir rite bi si la daanoo bam daanoo rek si la collapse waaye ñoom defuñ ko dara. But then there was an eyewitness ka nga xam ne moom he saw the police officers beating him while on handcuffs. So moom ne police yi dañ ko téyoon already ba pare di ko dóor si kaw loolu moom daal moom loolu la gis. The news bi eggee Mandinaring ne Omar Badjie dafa dee because of police brutality. Waa Mandinaring yi muy mag xale ndaw góor jigéen ñëpp jóg starting to protest this death. So ba gaa jógee Mandinaring nag jubali Lamen. Ba gaa eggee Lamen nag mu nekkoon a very big group of people ñi nga xam ne ñu ngi protest. Waa ñoom seen message yu gaa amee woon while protesting was just demanding for very basic things. ñu doon ask for an end to police brutality. While B, they were also seeking justice for Omar Badjie. And C, they were also demanding accountability. Di wax ne daal lu munta xew si lii bugga den si leerlu bu baax a baax. That was their message when they got to Lamen. Ba gaay eggee Lamen fekkoon nen for a heavy presence of riot police from the police intervention unit mooy di PIU. Waaye ñoom ba gaay eggee foofu noonu they were like nothing is gonna stop us from reaching our destination because ñoom Lamen taxatu na jóg gaay they wanted to proceed to Banjulunding because Omar moom moo gaañu but then few other people ñi nga xam ne ñoo nekkoon di tux ak Omar were all arrested. So ñoom their plan was okay dañoo egga Banjulunding at the anti-crime unit bu nekk Banjulunding and demand for the unconditional release of all the other people ñi nga xam ne ñoo nekkoon together with Omar mooy ñi nga xam ne ñoom leen téewoon si riite bu ñu riite gaay noonu. So Omar moom gaañu ne already waaye ñeneen ñi nga xam ne police yi jotoon nañ la ñoo téye ba yóbbu leen si station bu nekk Banjulunding mooy di anti-crime unit. So ñoom liñ bëggoon a dem ba egga Banjulunding and the message was suñ fa eggee the condition is for police yu bàyyi ñi nga xam ne ñooñu la gaay téye unconditionally. So si diggante boobu noonu nag riot officers yi nanguñ toon pour ñu romba Lamen so ñoom ñu forcé because there were some barricade mooy maanaam barras. In that process of breaking through the police barricade loolu nag moo nekkoon nag comme coow bu mag a mag between the police and the rioters. So si la police yi commencé use tear gas pour disperse the crowd waaye protesters tamit nag si la gaa commencé lakka pono commencé sànni xeer mu nekkoon nag comme very big confrontation between the police and the protesters. And the confrontation went on for 2 days because Friday la dooroon then they were back on the streets again on Saturday continuing their protests. So mu nekkoon like 2 days protest bu métti on both sides, both the police and the protesters. Hearing about the ongoing protests around the area, sila nag some police officials including the Assistant Inspector General of Police gaa yëpp ñëwoon to the scene. Si biir foofu noonu nag ñoo bak some kilifa yu nekkoon from Lamen gaa yi waxtaan so had a conversation and then later ñëpp ñu align ok ñii seen demande si mooy pour ñu release ñi nga xam ne ñoom la gaa yi téewoon ak Omar then si la then waxtaan bi d'accord then after si la 2 pickups mu ñëw ici everybody ñi nga xam ne dañ leen jàppoon the previous night because of tie then after some police officers together with the community ñu gunge gaa yi nag all the way back to Mandinaring just bu ko defee affaire si mun a jeex. Gannaaw loolu nag on Sunday mu doon September 28 the police released another statement saying that all the 4 police officers who were involved in the pursuit of Omar Badjie have all been suspended, arrested, and detained pending investigation by the state. So loolu la police released on Sunday. Why? More recently, gis nañ ne court hearings si start na and then the first person to testify before the court is Superintendent Lamin Cham nag moom waa Sukuta la. Moom tam ni mu explain story bi si court bi mooy mene this guy was chased by the police officers dañ ko doon réete waaye ba mu ko réetee nag mu daanu and then he was told to stand up by the police and then he told the police that he was too exhausted to stand moo ne dafa soona he was weak mënutoon a taxaw but then the police tried to force him to stand. And then he went further to confirm that Omar Badjie was indeed slapped by one police officer called Suleiman Jaju. So moom mi ne confirm na ne Suleiman lu ndaw mbij na ko benn yoon. So he slapped him either once or twice but he definitely slapped the deceased Omar Badjie. In addition, moom Lamin Cham mi confirm na tamit police officer bu ñoo ooyee Suleiman Jaju jëloon na banta mu dóoroon ko Omar Badjie mi mu doon ko nga xam ne dafa gaañu si this incident. But like I said earlier, the court hearings have just started and Lamin Cham is the first witness so far. So we still have to be patient and wait for other witnesses to testify before the courts. So I hope that justice is served in this matter. I am very happy that the government of the Gambia is already investigating this. Su ko defee family Omar Badjie bi mun a teel a am closer on this matter. So while waiting for the outcome of this investigation, I just want to take this moment to quickly congratulate the President of the Republic of the Gambia, President Adama Barrow, for speaking up on this issue, because lu bari bari yaakaar naa happen Gambia, you don't even see the president. So this time def na ko dama ko congratulate si loolu ba pare di ko wax ne this is what we expect from you as the president of the country. Anytime there's confrontation, especially something like of this magnitude, nit yaa ngi génn daf dee baax ñu am president or somebody like a leader génn wax su ko defee mu mun a calm situation bi while the investigation continue. Why not? Considering the people around President Adama Barrow and the experiences that they each had, you would expect Gambia, under the leadership of President Adama Barrow, to be one of the most protest-tolerant countries in Africa. Because almost everybody around President Adama Barrow, including President Adama Barrow himself, have tested what it means to be on the receiving side of bad laws or injustice. Here I'll give examples of prominent figures in Barrow's cabinet and how their experiences or the statements they made in the past could be very, very helpful in guiding President Adama Barrow's government to do the right thing. Starting with the case of Honorable Bakari Badjie. Now in 2017, June, there was like a protest that the media houses described as a violent protest in Kanilai. And lu waraloon protest bu mooy the people of Kanilai said they did not want the presence of economic forces in and around Kanilai. It was during this protest that the late Haruna Jatta was shot and killed by the economic forces. Why reporter mi ngi indicate ne even though moom moo dee woon, why two other economic soldiers were also injured in the process. So gannaaw bi li happen nag when it was time for burial, Honorable Sidi Njie attended the burial. Honorable Fabakary Tamba, who is the current Speaker of the National Assembly, was also there. But at the time, both Sidi Njie and Honorable Fabakary Tombong Jatta were all senior members of the APRC party. I know they're still APRC, I think, but they were more APRC than NPP at the time. So they went there, they attended the funeral, as APRC members, because at the time, many Gambians, especially people from the APRC party, thought this was a politically inspired killing. So when Honorable Mai Fati moo nekkoon the Minister of Interior. So mom talking to the journalist, lu mu waxoon mooy he described this as a violent incident. Ba pare mel ne comme the protesters used traditional weapons to attack the economic forces. Mom loolu la ko describe. So apparently he went on to say that the government of Adama Barrow will not interfere with people practicing their fundamental human rights. So mom in the niti am neen right to do protest. Why mom his message to the people who mooy su ñoo def protest, I mean let's just do it through the legal means. So lu tax ma isi the story is because of what Bakary Badjie said at the time. Now this was a time when Mr. Badjie was not a minister. He was just an activist, I think, because foguma ne amoon na any association with the APRC party at the time. Waaye bi li happen daf ko naxarlu mu dem Facebook, and what he wrote on his account at the time was, first, minimum fogo na sax waa Kanilai am nañ any genuine reason to protest based on moom lu mu nekkoon di gis, like lu noon gaay di wax bañ doon protest, right? So gëmute na ñoom am nañ any reason to protest. Why? Mu doon naxaru the use of live rounds on innocent protesters. Ak tamit ngi hope ne at the time, because when this happened, many people were calling them violent, and especially lu may fàtte wax ne they use traditional weapons. Minimum he hoped that the use of they were armed, lu nay gaay nekkoon di wax naan they were armed, you drop that statement. Because videos you nekkoon di circulate in social media yep gisutoon for anywhere that these people were armed. So moom fogutoon ne daal comme lu gaay defoon was enough to justify the use of force on the protesters. So loolu la Bakary Badjie wax. Why? Dr. Badjie went further to say that he was disappointed with the way that people were reacting to this. So by hell, ñu bari at the time thought this was a politically inspired shooting. So minimum he was disappointed, but he went further to ask questions. How do you defend the protests that you used to do in the past, even with some of them being violent? Why time but you couldn't defend because you were all in the opposition? Why not? This was in 2017. So at the time, UDP ñu oppose si nguuri Gambia because Adama Barrow moo nekkoon the president and Lawyer was also in there, and this was the time that Adama Barrow himself didn't gain his bomb si UDP. So Bakary's statement was, how do you guys defend the many protests you did in the past when you were in the opposition, and even some of those protests being kind of violent, while this time ñëpp a ngi ko against? So lii yëpp mooy li nga xam ne Honorable Bakary Badjie waxoon na ko at the time. So I agree with every single thing that Bakary Badjie said. Wow, nangu naa everything that he said in 2017. So yes, now Honorable Badjie, now you are the Minister of Youth and Sports, and youths are still dying under your watch while protesting. What are you doing about it? Well, because you gave an example of people who were once in the opposition and would justify their protest, even with some of them being violent, then bagari maybe falu nak ñu fatelu gaay waxon yep. So legi ñu la laccé, you as the Minister of Youth and Sports, ni nga naxarlé won day say Haruna Jatta bi. Now you're the Minister of Youth and Sports, one of those close to the president. What are you advising the president on this? So you see, in this example, indicate na Sidi Njie, because he was APRC, very APRC at the time that this happened. Time bono Sidi Njie amuton dara lu mo defa Adama Barrow at the time. Honorable Fabakary Tombong Jatta, Bakary Badjie. So all of these people were impacted by this single incident. And these are now people that are closest to the president. So man luma lache moy, how are you guys using your influences to tell the president, you know what, ñu ñep dundal leen li. We know how hard it is for the families. Let's please repeal the Public Order Act, or let's make the laws more favorable for the protesters. So that was the story of Honorable Bakary Badjie. Here I will narrate another story involving Dr. Ismaila Ceesay. Dr. Ceesay nag moom mun nañu wax sax suma koto la, because liggéey naa moom between 2010 and 2012 at the University of the Gambia. Then I was a teaching assistant in the chemistry department. He was already a lecturer. Fekk amagutoon PhD bi sax nag. Muy kuma now so much because the guy is very, very smart, very eloquent, and I like how he mostly carry himself. February of 2018, he was arrested by the Gambia police force. So ñoom bañ ko arresté nag lu gaay waxoon ne moo taxoon ñu arrest ko mooy because of an interview that he gave to one of the local newspapers. So in the interview, he spoke about the presence of the economic forces, mooy soldier yi nga xam ne ñu ngi jógee ECOWAS nekk biir Gambia. So he spoke about them ak mu wax li nga xam ne daal government in Gambia bi, or at least the police sector, then ko téewoon as a threat to our national security. So because of loolu nag ñu chargeon ko for incitement to violence. Moom it bañ ko téye nag nekkoon na police for few hours. So at the time moom ba mu génne lu mu doon expérience sax mooy police yi bàyyoon neen ko pour mu dem, waaye moom dafa wax gaay ne du dem, foog gaay waxuñ ko lu tax ñu arrest ko, pour ñu leeralal ko la moo tax ñu arrest ko, mais ne du dem. So dem na sax ba di explain the police were begging him to go, waaye moom moo ne du dem daal. While later, when the students of the University of the Gambia heard about this, because Dr. Mahadito Youth Sila, pour ñaka ko like at the time, yombuton, everybody likes Dr. Ceesay. So by hale dege lolu from the University of the Gambia, everybody went to the police headquarters in Banjul protesting for his release. So it started with around 50, and then later number bi gonna increase, but at some point Dr. would decide to go. So non len ko baye mu dem. Gannaaw si moom si biir waxam sax mi ngi naan ne ba ko gaay téye woon bala ñu ko doon bàyyi, the police were initially telling him that they were waiting for orders from above. Now, Lulu, to many people, they thought it was the president that, told the police to arrest him. Why? At the time, Demba Ali Jawa Monekon, the Minister of Information, why moment this had nothing to do with the president. Many police ñoo ko soxla woon ngir interview mu joxe ak lu mu fa wax si interview bi. Loolu moo taxoon police yi téye ko as a security threat pour gars yi di ko doon interrogate. Why moment this had nothing to do with the president. Wow, lu tax ma isi the story mooy because of the many things that he said after his release. Now, mun na interview ak ñu bare waaye one of the statements that he made was bañ ko bàyyee, the police tried to intimidate him, but they got the wrong guy. Wow, they got the wrong guy, which I completely agree with. Emut foofu tamit, this is how Jammeh started. Because Jammeh tamit nii la commencé woon danka because fekk Adama Barrow tam was brand new at the time. So Adama Barrow came in, let's say early 2017, because election was in late 2016 to 2017. Adama Barrow nekk president by February or June of 2017. Dr. Ceesay was already arrested. Moo tax President Jammeh tam nii la doore woon. In the end, he turned to be a dictator. Mu rule ñu for over 22 years. Waaw mu nekkoon nag 22 years yu métti, and then we fought to free ourselves. Foogoon ne léegi this is gonna be the new Gambia. Why the government of Adama Barrow was already setting a bad precedent. Lu ma foog si li mooy again I agree with him 100%. lu Dr. Ceesay waxoon yépp I agree with him. ak tamit I agree with the bold statements he made bañ ko bàyyee beneen mooy they try to intimidate me but they got the wrong guy. waaye ñaar mi ngi naan ne tamit this is how Jammeh started. Wow, this is how Jammeh started, and Jammeh became a dictator for 22 years, and we just freed ourselves thinking that this was going to be new Gambia, while the government was already setting bad precedents. So, lola ko Ismaila Ceesay wato d'accord naa si trop. More importantly, I appreciated how the youths showed up in his defense. Wow, su dee mën nga ñëw fàttali ko, this was the time bi xale yi génnee téye loxo bi ñu ko ooyee Mandela, and everybody, including myself, was happy that he was released and justice was served. Because police Baye then drop on all the charges, and he even went further to ask them to apologize. Wow, because he believed that he was denied his right to freedom of speech or freedom of expression. So Gambia support on Lulu, right? So now you are the Minister of Information. The same bad laws that the Gambia police force used to deny you the right to freedom of expression still exist and are still being used by the police to deny others freedom of assembly. And because of these bad laws, most of the protests are turning violent. And when your rights were being infringed by the police, the youths showed up in your defense. The same youths are still being tortured and subjected to other forms of police brutality while protesting. Please do something about it. You are one of those very, very close to the president. So how are you using your influence to convince the president that people should have the right to freedom of expression and freedom of assembly? And for the case of Momodou Sabally, another very, very smart brother, someone known as Mambokala, because Sanjal, Gana Farafenya, right? So again, he is a brother, very, very smart one for that matter. Mom taming amon case with the IEC, Moy, Ganabe IEC Wahene, Momodou Sabally was not qualified to take part in the National Assembly elections. Mudon election bunga hamne Momodou Sabally bugo na tahaw as the MP for the Busumbala constituency. So what will happen nak youth bari on the protest. Now youth, most of them from the UDP party, because Momodou Sabally parti bu mu gona taxawal mo won UDP. Si biir protest boobu noonu nag mu amoon ci youth yu bari yi nga xam ne dañ leen dóoroon because ñoom jaraloon ne leen ne pour ñu xeexal Momodou Sabally, knowing that ne Momodou Sabally am na the right to contest. Waaw, because ñu bari si ñun den foogoon ne the Jammeh Commission banning Momodou Sabally from holding public office for the rest of his life was very harsh. Ak tamit there were other people whose names were mentioned in the Jammeh Commission's report te ñu gis leen ñu doon liggéey ak Adama Barrow. Loolu nag moo taxoon ñu bari doon protest saying ne comme this is not right. Momodou Sabally also deserve the same right. ñu am benn liggéeyal the government of the Gambia. Moom it am na that right to participate in the National Assembly elections. A few months later, December of 2022, the same Momodou Sabally was detained by the police for more than 72 hours because of an audio that was going around in which he was heard saying that ne mom dina génne Adama Barrow bala the local government elections, and this was in December of 2022. So gannaaw bañ ko téye nag nanguñ ko bàyyi, and it was already over 72 hours. Youths génnaat again. So the youths are always there for everybody. This time tamit youths génnaat di protest ne pour ñu bàyyi Momodou Sabally. Again, police use a tear gas on them. So you see, the youths have always been there. Give now an example of Dr. Ismaila Ceesay when the youths came out to protest for him. Now, this is also the case of Momodou Sabally. Again, on 2 occasions, youths again to protest because they believe that their rights were being infringed by the police. Lolu mo jaral nak youths on many occasions again put protest for other individuals. Legi nak gis na ne Momodou Sabally is one of those very, very close to the president. And when it comes to communication, ñu ñëpp xam ne Momodou Sabally Gambia yëpp kenn daawul ko wax. So we are calling on him, just like we've already called on Dr. Ismaila Ceesay and Honorable Bakary Badjie, to use his influence to convince the President of the Gambia to repeal the Public Order Act, but also find a way of ending police brutality.